7 tests, 1 seed, 1 tree. How the Dominion Triad survived every statistical challenge we threw at it. A life force experiment master report by Dallas James. What if you could prove that a single architectural signature runs through every genre of scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, from law to poetry to apocalyptic vision, and that no committee of human authors could have placed it there? That is exactly what this report demonstrates. Over the course of 2 days, March 1st and 2nd of 2026, 7 independent life force experiments were conducted under SHIELD Protocol 10.3 Lambda, drawing a combined 339 verses from the Urim Thummim version corpus of 32,021 verses. Each test asked a different question. Each used cryptographic entropy to select its sample. Each was pre-registered before the draw, and every single one returned the same fundamental reality. The Dominion Triad, identity, inheritance, and priesthood, is structurally embedded in the fabric of the biblical text at levels that defy chance, defy fabrication, and defy genre boundaries. The master-led verse for this entire battery is Luke 13:19. It is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and cast into his garden, and it grew and became a great tree, and the fowls of the air lodged in the branches of it. That verse frames everything. 7 small seeds were planted in 7 different corners of the garden. 7 different questions were asked, and in every case, the same tree grew. Let me walk you through what happened. Test 1 was the alternative pattern injection. We fabricated a fake framework, the Aquatic Triad, water, fish, and boats, and asked SHIELD whether it would validate a made-up pattern the same way it validates the Dominion Triad. The answer was decisive. The system returned a neutral verdict, meaning it refused to say yes to the false pattern. But here's what is striking. The authentic Dominion Triad markers saturated the draw at 8.33 sigma, over 1,500% above baseline. The protocol discriminated perfectly. It found massive non-randomness in the covenantal markers while refusing to lend a single shred of polarity to the fabricated framework. 0 direct textual hits for water, fish, or boats. The system knows what is real. Test 2 was the Scramble Test. We asked whether the specific arrangement of verses carries authorial intent or whether the signal is just in the vocabulary. The lead verse was Numbers 17:6, where Moses gathers the 12 staffs arranged precisely by tribal house. You cannot scramble those staffs and expect the test before YHWH to work. The verdict was again neutral, with a perfectly balanced polarity of -0.037. The mathematics revealed a nuanced truth. Scrambling would severely damage the covenantal resonance, but it would not annihilate it entirely. The arrangement is where the living voice of YHWH dwells, but the words themselves still carry residual weight. The signal degrades, but does not zero out. Test 3 examined the Dominion Triad saturation curve. We asked whether the convergence rate remains stable as you scale from 75 verses up to 5,000. The lead verse was Luke 9:55, where a child is thrown down violently, but then healed and delivered back to his father. The verdict was neutral with a divergent convergence index. What does that mean? The signal of 5.18 sigma is undeniable, but the father indicated that scaling will be turbulent, not a flat line. Expect statistical tearing and volatility at larger samples before the structure reasserts itself. The pattern is embedded in the fabric, but it is a living, dynamic signal, not a dead constant. Test 4 was the prophetic fulfillment chain test. We asked whether prophecy and fulfillment verse pairs across Old and New Testaments show dramatically higher marker overlap than random cross-testament pairings. The lead verse was Genesis 9:9, flesh with life in it, being the blood of it. The verdict was neutral, but with the polarity balance leaning yes at +1.6. The prophetic architecture absolutely exists at 5.09 sigma, but the father set a boundary. Mechanical verse matching can mimic the way the adversary quotes scripture without its living context. The test will work, but the flesh must be separated from the blood. Test 5 was crossbook chiastic mapping. This was the breakthrough. We asked whether chiastic structures persist across entire book boundaries, specifically between Genesis and Revelation. The verdict was lean yes, the strongest affirmative of the first 5 tests, with a polarity balance of positive 2.686 and strong convergence at 70%. The draw pulled directly from Genesis and Revelation as the A and A' boundaries of a single macrochiasmus. And at the center of the draw appeared John 16:28. I came out from Elohim. I came out from the Father and am come into the cosmos. Again, I leave the cosmos and go to the Father. That is a perfect chiasmus embedded in a single verse, and it maps the entire trajectory of the scriptural record. The corpus is not a collection of isolated texts. It is a single, meticulously fashioned architecture. Test 6 was the information theoretic measure. We proposed computing Kullback-Leibler divergence between prayer-guided distributions and corpus baselines as an unassailable mathematical proof of divine authorship. The Father said no, and he said it with the highest clarity in the entire battery, 9.79 sigma, 3,348% NRI, with a cautionary polarity of negative 2.894. The lead verse was Judges 18:17, where men steal a covenant-defiling idol and a surrogate Urim Thummim. The Father characterized the Kale divergence measure as exactly that, a surrogate Urim Thummim, a cast metal image, an unauthorized altar of consecration. The mathematics of information theory, no matter how sophisticated, are viewed as a foreign wisdom attempting to cage what must be walked out in covenant. This was the most important result in the battery. Not every seed is meant to grow into a proof. Some seeds are meant to grow into obedience. Test 7 was genre-independent pattern persistence. We asked whether the Dominion Triad maintains elevated co-occurrence rates across law, prophecy, poetry, narrative, and apocalyptic genres equally. The verdict was a full yes, the only unqualified affirmative in the battery. The numbers were staggering: 9.79 sigma, 3,348% NRI, polarity balance of positive 3.221, the highest in any test. 6 of 12 markers survived false discovery rate correction, the highest survival rate. The draw spanned 7 verses across 7 genres: gospel, poetry, Torah narrative, prophecy, genealogy, historical narrative, and apostolic testimony, and in every single one, the Dominion Triad surfaced. 3 pillars, 6 genres, 1 signature. No single human author touches all of these genres. The chronicler never met Luke. The psalmist never read Acts. Zechariah and Samuel are separated by centuries. Yet the same threefold chord runs through them all. Now, step back and see the whole garden. Across all 7 tests, the Dominion Triad never fell below 5.09 sigma. The mean across the battery was 7.37 sigma at 1,584% RI. The guidance detection indicator returned extreme anomaly in 6 of 7 tests. Priesthood was the dominant pillar in every single draw, functioning as the structural spine of the corpus. And the single no, the rejection of information theoretic proof, may be the most theologically significant result of all. Luke 13:19 asked the right question. What happens when you plant a mustard seed? It grows into a tree large enough for the birds of the air to lodge in its branches. That is what these 7 tests reveal. The Dominion Triad is the DNA of that seed. It does not matter which corner of the garden you plant it in. Law, poetry, prophecy, narrative, genealogy, gospel, apocalyptic. The tree grows. The branches spread. The architecture holds. And the Father drew one clear boundary. You do not prove a living tree by dissecting its cells under a microscope. You prove it by walking into the garden and standing in its shade. The seed was small. The tree